I've now watched every team play at least once in the World Cup. I've watched some games live, I've looked back on some games and done some research, some analysis, took notes on, teams not just based on results, but just looking at, the way teams that they set up, the way that they press, some of the defensive structures, seeing if a team has an actual identity. Some teams more than others are more obvious with that. But I really wanted in this LCF podcast to talk about really is just kind of what Matchday One has brought us, and what it has taught us. I'm going to kind of break it into kind of four categories. Which teams have let me down, which teams have honestly surprised me, which teams I'm a bit hesitant about still, even though they may have won, and lastly, teams that I'm optimistic about that I think could actually go far in the competition, could go deep into the competition. So let's start with the biggest disappointments or letdowns. I have to go back to the first game for the first team, which is South Africa. Um, I think their performance didn't really age well at all. Um, they didn't really kind of know what to do in the final third when they had it. Um, but a lot of their mishaps, a lot of their, they kind of just they shot themselves in the foot. A lot of self-inflicted, getting fellas sent off. Just very poor. Like when you consider that, they're playing a host nation in Mexico in the Aztec Stadium, and like you're up against it. And I questioned before in a video that I did the predictions, group stage prediction for the World Cup, and I questioned the quality of the South African league, and because that's where a lot of their players play, and I just I just felt like they just didn't play to their strengths at all. Um, as I said, you're going to be up against it, so why do you give away cheap goals like the first goal they gave up? Playing that pass into the center and just inviting Mexico pressure, and Mexico weren't even really playing that well. Like I just think they could have made it a whole lot harder for them. Instead, they gifted them the first goal, got a fella sent off, then playing this very high line, left all the space in the world. Do you know what I mean? And another red card, and by then really like the game was done. They're going to have to really fix up for the next game because they absolutely just lost their heads. Paraguay then is the second one, again playing a host nation. I did to be honest with you, Paraguay were probably nearly worse. Like didn't really offer anything. They got a lucky goal really with they were playing the States, in the States, which is quite hard, but they sat back. They didn't really kind of, they weren't really resolute. They weren't really aggressive in the tackle or physical, in the duel. And they offered really, really no kind of threat on the counter, like no transition threat. So yeah, I thought they were very, very poor. Third team, Belgium. Yeah, I had them before as the flops of the tournament, and I still stand by it. I still think they just lack cutting edge. I think Kevin De Bruyne had a couple of opportunities in the match that he couldn't take. But yeah, I wasn't really impressed by Belgium now at all, and kind of everything that I said before, I kind of felt justified in saying. Um, the only kind of positive I will give with Belgium is that Lukaku actually came off the bench and he did change the game, and maybe that could be something that they might look to in the next two group games. You know, just playing that maybe a bit more direct. Portugal, I thought Portugal were diabolical lads. I'll be honest with you. They scored a great header. Joe Neves, he leapt like a salmon there and put it into the top corner with a header. Brilliant, brilliant header. But other than that, like they had many kind of, I wouldn't even say opportunities. It was like they had the ball like for a lot of the match, but I think like just having the ball, having possession is not really dominance. They weren't really dominating um DR Congo there. And if anything, Congo looked a better team, I think, in the match, which kind of says it all. They were kind of yeah, just very lax, very sloppy in the ball. It was like they were really sleepwalking to that result, um, which I think they deserved in the end to draw the game. They might have even been lucky, actually, really, to draw the game, because I actually thought Congo, they had a couple of opportunities to win it, and I think they would have been fair winners if they'd won it. Because just, I mean, everyone's talking now about Ronaldo being a hindrance to the team and stuff. I watched a little section of analysis from Henri, um, just discussing the role of Ronaldo as the nine, as the centre forward in the team, and he's spot on. Like in what he's saying, you have to be kind of, as a striker, you have to be selfish in some moments, but you also have to be selfless in terms of you make that run, and then it opens the space for somebody else, and it just seems like it's just always about Ronaldo. I'm not a Ronaldo hater in the slightest, but it just looks like that Portugal team. Um, it's like you're down a man in possession and out of possession. Because he just doesn't get involved. And it's kind of it's a shame because I think Portugal have actually got a really good squad, and yeah, they're really disappointed in me now, I must say. And then the last team, I think, were probably the poorest considering the expectation, was Turkey. And like they they seem to come into every tournament with like this dark horse tag, and I thought, like, I thought this was going to be the competition now where they actually finally show something. Because it seems like it's just constantly tournament after tournament of like disappointment. But they've started this one the same as they've started many before, and they just look very devoid of ideas. Like, in fairness to Australia, I didn't expect much from them, and I'll get to their performance in a minute. But they just like sat back. They got the first goal. Like, don't get it twisted. I think Turkey were actually getting outplayed before the first goal. And then when the first goal went in, Australia decided to sit back, and then Turkey they didn't know how to break down the low block of Australia at all, and then they got sucker punched with a second goal, a counter attacking goal. But just, yeah, you're looking at like Chalanoglu, Gulair, a couple of like the other players that are just, they had so much of the ball on, the edge of the D, outside the box, and just there was just no penetration. They just not couldn't play through Australia, and were very yeah, I thought they were very poor. Very, very poor. And not good enough at all. And they're gonna have to really fix up for the next game, because I mean, if you're a team there, you just copy what Australia did, because they had no answers to it. So moving on then to some of the surprises, which there is a lot of surprises in the tournament. Um, Feels like a lot of like the lesser nations, a lot of nations that you didn't really kind of expect much from, actually showed up and showed that they can play. Haiti, they really gave Scotland a game, I think. They put it on Scotland, very physical in the duel. They were very good in progressing the ball with ball carries. There was a couple of players, especially Bellegarde, former Wolves player. Actually, I think he still plays for Wolves. But he, there's a few times there where he was able to get the ball into his feet and just drive. And it wasn't just him. But yeah, I think they really gave Scotland a game. Like, they might have been unlucky to, uh, lose the game 1-0. It was a deflected strike. John McGinn, his body's on the line, and to be honest, his shot was probably either going to be saved or going wide, and it deflected. It went in, but yeah, I look, I wouldn't be surprised in their next game if they if they cause teams some problems, and they have some set piece trade as well, which I noticed. It didn't come off against Scotland, but they did cause them a couple of problems there. But yeah, just like when you think of the expectations of Haiti, nobody really expected anything, and I think they showed that they can actually play. The next team, which is my shock of the tournament so far, and I have to hold my hands up and apologise to all the Aussies and all the Australians, because I thought they were brilliant. I genuinely thought that Australia were brilliant. I thought yeah, they were up against a poor Turkey team, but when you compare Turkey to Australia, like there should only be one winner. And I thought they were actually beating Turkey, in a football match because they made it kind of end to end at the start. They were, we have chances, you have chances, kind of a game. But to be honest, I thought they were winning that before they got the first goal. They got the first goal and then decided to sit back. And I think it was the right thing to do because Turkey just didn't know what to do. Like they just didn't know how to get through them. And that's where I will give credit to the game management because I think they recognized we're like, Turkey aren't really a threat here. Like, so why don't we sit back and we might get a second goal on the counter? And that's exactly what happened. They got a breakaway goal on the counter and come away with a 2-0 win, which was just like fantastic for them. And they might only need another point now, maybe, to guarantee them into the next round. And I had them bottom of the group in my prediction video. I got that run wrong. Well, they still could, but I don't know. Based on the evidence of the first game, it's actually looking quite good for Australia. Cape Verde, you have to talk about Cape Verde and Pico. Fair play. No, I'm going to give them a lot of praise, but I'm also going to maybe die down a small bit because really they should have conceded, guys. I think they were actually trying to play out against the Spain team that was pressing them, and they got picked off a few times, trying to play out. And Pico, in fairness, like he got caught a few times trying to play out. But look, Spain, they didn't take their chances, and like you do have to give credit to Cape Verde and like the defensive resilience that they had. When you consider it's their first World Cup and you're coming up against a juggernaut in Spain, like to keep a clean sheet. Yeah, they didn't really. I don't think they had much going the other way, but some of the defending there, guys, like the Pico again, like he made a block towards the end, that like it was just outstanding. They rode their luck a few times, but I'm absolutely buzzing for them. I'm absolutely buzzing that they picked up their point in the World Cup, and it's just you can't give anything but praise to them. Like you have to. It's like who would have thought it? Like it probably is the shock result of the tournament so far. DR Congo, I thought they were brilliant again, lads, and I think they should have. I think if they had any bit of like clinicalness to them, is that a word? Clinicalness, clinicality. I'm not sure which word it is, but you know what I'm saying. If they were clinical, I think they probably would have won the game. They set up in a back five, but they again like it was quick. Like they had something going the other way. They grew into the game. I think like at the start, Neves got the goal. They were, I don't know, they weren't they didn't actually start the game that well, but they definitely grew into it as the game went on. And the further the game was going, even into that second half, I was really feeling like they were gonna score a counter, like a transition. Never materialized, but you have to considering like you're up against Portugal there with the midfield of Vitinha, Joe Neves, Bruno Fernandes, Ronaldo's up top as well, kept him very quiet in the game. Panama, guys, they can play. I was very surprised. I didn't expect anything from Panama at all, even though I think they appeared in the World Cup in 2018. Um, but yeah, I to be honest, I thought they were very unlucky to lose. Um, the first half in the match against Ghana, they were, on the front foot, controlled possession, well able to play it around Ghana. Ghana couldn't get near them in that first half. Probably lacked a bit up top, but that's kind of expected, I think, like in the final third. Like it's, I've noticed that with a lot of teams, like, like the smaller nations, they're very good at like, they're very good coached at the back and, in terms of like having a low block and transitioning. But when they do get into the final third, a lot of time, you know, they just mightn't have that quality, like which is expected, and you can't be too harsh on that either. So the next category is hesitant. Yeah, teams that may have won, but I'm still a bit hesitant to kind of give too much credit for. The first one is France. Now you might think, what are you talking about? France were brilliant there, but the first half, guys, that was really the definition of a game of two halves for France, because in that first half, I thought they were desperate. Like they were just the passing underweighted, overweighted, touches of the players like just bouncing off them. They were trying to run back them when they were defending. I thought Doué and Olise just so easily beaten in terms of like, when you're trying to press a team in and you force them to one side, and then the fullback just decides to like cut inside and just take the winger out of the game who's trying to press. Like I felt like they'd done that a good few times to Elise and Doué, where they were just drove with the ball into the midfield. It was just too easy. Like it was just way too easy. And there was a lot of kind of like fake pressing, was what I call it. When you're pressing, but really you're not. Because believe me, I've seen a lot of teams in this tournament that have pressed well, and they weren't one of them. And that's where I'm like, I really do see a lot of like, they have so much quality. Don't get me wrong. Like when you think of Mbappe, Olise, Dembele, Doué, like Barcola coming off the bench scoring, and but I'm still a bit kind of, I'm gonna just play it down a bit because yeah, that first half, like don't get me wrong, the second half they upped it. They were a lot better in that second half. Mbappe, in fairness, he was making runs in the first, he wasn't getting it, but when they swapped Dembele, who started in the central position behind Mbappe, he was getting absolutely no joy in that first half. But he swapped with Olise in the second half, so he went over to the right hand side, and Olise went into the central, and it changed everything. Like Olise was finding Mbappe, and it came from Mbappe's goal, pass from Olise, cut straight through. But yeah, I think the game kind of played into their hands as well. Like Senegal, they weren't really kind of resolute at the back. The game got very stretched, and I think it suited France, to be honest. When they've got the pace in behind like that, to just one ball there and they're gone. Brazil, I didn't really kind of get any answers from the Brazil game when they were playing Morocco there on Saturday. I just Everything that I kind of questioned beforehand, I kind of seen. I was wondering about that midfield, and whether it's easy to actually run around it when you think of like, these Casemiro's. Fabinho actually came on. I thought he did okay, but yeah, I just feel like you can play around that Brazil midfield and you can punch through them. And you saw it with the goal that Morocco scored. Like it was just one ball straight through the middle, which was quite poor. But yeah, I just feel like they do have weaknesses. I think they are very evident. I think it's quite mad that when you're looking at like the Brazilian teams of old and the Brazilian teams now, it's some shift. Like I finished watching montage there of like the 2002 World Cup and seeing the goals that Brazil scored. Ronaldo and Rivaldo. Guys, Rivaldo was just unbelievable as well. He doesn't get as much praise as Ronaldo, but when you see like the contrast from that to now, where like I think they used to have the guy Fred up top, that profile of striker. Now they have Thiago. It's just I find it quite strange, just seeing that for Brazil. I didn't really kind of see any kind of fluidity in the team. Didn't really learn anything new from them. That's why I'm a bit hesitant. No, they're probably gonna get through in the group and face tougher tests to come, and that's where I think they will eventually fail. But let's see on Brazil. Let's see Germany. I'm still a bit hesitant. Obviously they were playing Curacao, and actually, in fairness to Curacao, when they drew it back 1-1, they had a bit of momentum, and then the hydration break just killed them, absolutely killed them. And I've noticed that with some of the games, like that these hydration breaks is what they're saying they are, but really we know what they are. They are ad breaks, and I think it really is a momentum killer for some teams. I think a lot of the managers will probably like having it because they just get the tactics board out. But if you're gonna call it a hydration break, like I don't understand why they're so long. Obviously it's the ads. They want the revenue, as much revenue as they can. Like, but I just can't believe how this has been allowed. To be honest with you, to to turn a game of football from halves into quarters. Like I'm all for respecting cultures when you're in, other countries. You abide by their rules and you abide by their ways. But really, like, the product is football, guys. Football is two halves. You can't just change the game into four quarters. But it's something we have to put up with, and it's something that I'm going to have to put up with for the next month, probably, however long the tournament goes on for. It's not going to change. The only thing I would say is that could there be a compromise? I don't think there will, but like, we're calling it a hydration break. Why can't the players stay on the pitch? If they want to sit down, they can. People on the sidelines, whether it be a ball boy or a ball girl or part of the coaching staff, or like, there's plenty of subs. I mean, it's a 26-man squad, is it? Why can't they come out and bring the players water? Just it just takes a few people to just run onto the pitch with some water. We all have a water break, a hydration break, which is what it's for. And then we get back to playing football, and that way then it's sped up. It's, I don't know, maybe 60 seconds or 90 seconds, but the fact that it's 3 minutes and sometimes nearly 4 minutes, and then teams are ready to, get back to playing, and hold on there a second because we're still in an ad break. Like, it's just not on at all. But yeah, I went on a bit of a tangent there. Germany. They were a bit lax, but they definitely made up for it. I think, it was 1-1 at one stage with Curacao, their first World Cup. Fair play to them, but really I don't think they played to their own strengths in terms of getting something out of the game. Really they should have, I think, trying to be a bit more resolute, a bit more, bit more defensive, but they were still, like, even at 3-1, 4-1, they were pushing the line so high, and Havertz there running through for the last goal. Like, it just, yeah. I mean, yeah, 7-1. Mexico, even though I know, like, they opened the tournament and they got the win, but really, like, it looked like a performance where, there was a lot of pressure inside that stadium with the home support and to deliver. There wasn't really much quality from them. Obviously they were gifted goals by South Africa, and pretty much gifted the result by South Africa, but they didn't really kind of have much quality. I felt, to be honest with you. So they pressed very well, as you'd expect, with the home support. But nah, I didn't really, I didn't think they had much quality on the ball. And I think they're going to have to fix up for the next tournament, or for the next game. Sorry. The next team then is Ghana, and even though they won, nah, I wasn't impressed by Ghana, and I think, yeah, I'd be hesitant now to say, like, that they'll actually go far in the competition despite winning, and despite them probably getting a step closer to getting out of the group. But yeah, just that first half against Panama, that when they were playing, like, they were getting outplayed by Panama. So I can only imagine what, like, some of the better teams would do to them, to be honest. But their subs did change the game. In fairness, Carlos Queiroz, I think, is their coach, and I think they snatched the win at the end. It was a breakaway goal, and you see the Panama guy at the end there. Oh my God, he's trying to run and trying to, like, dive in and tackle the player, and you're just like, stay on your feet, man. There's 2 minutes to go. But look, Ghana took full advantage, and they got the win. It's a results game. Norway, they did play some nice stuff, like, and, like, I think they will obviously get tested more when like, the further down the competition goes, and definitely in their next two group games. I didn't think Iraq were really that bad. They had a couple of, like, errors on their part. That pass back to the goalkeeper, which led to Haaland's, I think it was, second goal. That is the definition of a hospital pass. Like, I'm from Cork, lads, if you haven't noticed already. But yeah, it seems to be a thing that Cork people love saying where they're from. But that's the type of pass that, like, I would say to my buddies, like, that's a CUH pass. If you know, you know. Cork University Hospital. So yeah, but getting back to Norway, I think, they did attack well, and they did regroup well in terms of, like, a couple of times there in the transition. It looked like Iraq could counter, but they kind of got back in numbers and stifled it out. But yeah, I'm just kind of not really getting kind of carried away. Sweden, I like. Don't be wrong, Graham Potter. I'm pleased for him and coming in, and it is a miracle how they are in the tournament. But I felt like Sweden, yeah, they were coming up against the Tunisian side that have since sacked their manager. So I can only imagine, in that camp there, like what's going on. But it's kind of hard to judge really. Have they done well, or were they up against like a poor team? Like I think what was positive from them though, and like I suppose it's quite obvious really, like the partnership of Isak and Yoker is up top. Like if you can get them playing, because when you think of like front twos in the tournament, like they're probably, for the caliber of player, like one's playing striker for Arsenal, one's playing striker for Liverpool. Yeah, they're both like have their weaknesses, both have their flaws, but like they're probably up there for like, one of the best kind of strike forces in the tournament when you deep it really, in terms of front twos. Yeah, these are teams that I'm actually optimistic about, and some of them mightn't have even actually won the game. First team I'm going to talk about actually didn't win the game, but I thought their game plan was solid out. Was the Czechs, the Czech Republic or Czechia? I'm not sure what to call them, but I think like look, it is disappointing. I have Roy Keane Irish jersey there. Um, they're in the tournament instead of us. It very much feels like that way. We have to just get over it, lads. We have to get over it. But to look at like the Czechs, objectively, it very simple game plan what they had. It was like they don't overplay at the back at all. They play this three. It's like a three four. It's like a 3-4-3 system. As I said, no overplaying. The goalkeeper just hoofs it up. I'm all for teams, lads, that play to their strengths and know their weaknesses, know their limitations. So I do have to give credit to the Czechs here, even though they lost. I thought their game plan, even though they did lose the game, like they had chances at 1-1. Like the set piece there, I think the goalkeeper for South Korea made a great save, but that could have easily been 2-1 to the Czechs there, and they come away with a win. They were, I suppose you could say they were a bit negative in the sense that when they had the five and they got the goal, like they got the goal from the throw in, like what a throw and what a header. But I thought like after that goal they actually dropped like a sixth man into the defense. I noticed, and it was actually quite ironic. Was that was when the space started to kind of open up for Korea. So maybe that could be something in the next game that they don't, when they do actually take a lead, not to put even another man back. Like you already have five there, lads. Like just a couple of things I noticed from them is that like when they do have a little bit of settled possession, like they're very much win the first ball, win the second ball, gain territory. Can we get up the pitch? Can our wide players win throw-ins? Can they win corners and then capitalize on those moments? But I did find that like they were trying to overload kind of the left side. Krejci, I pinpointed him before the tournament started. He's very much like he's their captain, and he's the left-sided centre back in the tree, and he you could see he's got like kind of license to step in a bit, and he was trying to like punch balls through through the lines. But he was part of like that left side that was, they were constantly finding the extra man, and which allowed them to get crosses into the box, and Thomas Souček in midfield was able to kind of box crash, and they were getting numbers in there, like they were getting numbers, in there for the cross and try to win it. I saw a lot of kind of maybe disrespect. I don't know, maybe a lot of kind of analysis of Czechs, like people saying that like, oh, they're not great, like, and I actually think their performance has aged well in the tournament, considering some of the other teams' performances. But like I'm just like, yeah, they mightn't play well in terms of like this control possession football that like, I think everyone's like ingrained now, like thinking that like this Pep Guardiola like football tiki-taka. Like, we all love seeing that play. Like, but you're not going to ask Thomas Suchek, like the big lanky fella that loves the header, like to play this tiki-taka system. Like, I love a team that plays to their strengths. Korea, who they played, I really like them as well. That was actually a very good game. And they actually played like a very similar system to the Czechs, but they were a lot more expansive with it. They were a lot more, where the Czechs weren't taking risks with the ball at the back. The South Koreans very much were trying to play out from the back and very much trying to play into those central areas. I found like they were playing a 3-4-3. The wing backs were staying wide, but also the wide players were staying wide. So it was leaving a lot of space in the middle of the park for the South Korean midfield players, and they have a lot of like very nimble half turn, good on the half turn players there in that squad. So that was something that they were very much trying to take advantage of. The only thing was with Son, I just feel like he's trying to be everywhere at once, and it's like, he's dropping deep, and he had a few chances in the match against the Czechs, like from getting the ball deep and running through and carrying the ball. I think I really like the Koreans, and they've actually scored one of my favorite goals of the tournament so far. Their equalizer was just so good, the way the guy found the space through the middle, cut back, the defender's gone that way, the goalkeeper's come out, and then he's just dinked it over the goalkeeper, and like the defender Krejci was trying to run back, and he thinks he's going to get there, and he can't get there. There's just enough on it. Like, it's just a beautiful goal, I thought. So yeah, very, very impressed by them, and very optimistic about them. Austria, I think you can see Ralph Ragnick, former Man United manager, might have even been their kind of sporting director. I'm not sure. He was definitely high up at Man United, but you could definitely see his imprint on the team. They're very much a possession team. I know they were playing Jordan, again, a team that I think it's their first World Cup, but you could see that like the makeup of their midfield, they were constantly getting in behind the midfield of Jordan. Just they couldn't deal with like the triangles, the rotations, and it was just constant like playing through the middle. The wide players were coming in field very narrow. Sabitzer, who was started out left, he was coming in field. So they were very much trying to take advantage of that central area and get between the lines. And I thought they pressed very well. The guy up top I mentioned before, probably butcher his name now, Kalajdzic. He's a striker. Thought he was a nuisance all game. Will probably cause teams problems again. Egypt, I think they had the most energy from a team I've seen so far in terms of pressing, in terms of like, getting to your man and trying to close down. I was really impressed by Egypt, despite I think they drew, it was 1-1 with Belgium, wasn't it? Yeah. But they actually it was interesting from them was that Salah, who like, throughout his years, we know him as this like, fast, direct right winger, blistering pace. Obviously he's not that he's slowing it or anything, but like he's slowed down a little bit. Doesn't probably have that high intensity runs that he can do as often as he did before, pushing on a bit. But he had this like central role in the team where he was playing kind of off Marmouche up front, and like I think it's probably one of the more kind of underrated parts of Salah's game. People maybe fail to kind of recognize his playmaking ability. He's very good at it. Like, you've seen it even towards the end of, I think not last season, but the season before. He developed this like pass where he's like running with his right with it down the right wing, and he just like with his left foot like outside the boot swerves it around the defender who's trying to close him down. Like, incredible. Like, but we didn't see that in this game, but we did see a lot of like one touch, just through balls, just some lovely link up. I really, really enjoyed the link up from Salah, and I thought he was balling out. I thought he was really, really good. And Egypt scored a great goal as well, and I think they will cause team problems. The goal they scored, like just a lovely touch and hit. Argentina is the next team. Lads, their commitment to the cause like is just undeniable. I think, when a lot of these guys, like you see them individually for teams in the Premier League and other leagues, and I think they just seem to up their level when they play for Argentina, and I really like, as much as like I know he's won it already, Messi. Like, I'd actually love him to win it again. You know, I just think he's even at 38, a joy to watch. Like, and I can be a bit sappy sometimes. I was nearly getting emotional watching Messi, just thinking that like it's probably his last World Cup, and just seeing him still do it. And he's brought me so much joy throughout the years, like, of watching football. And I just so grateful for to be in, this era of watching like one of the greats, probably the greatest in my lifetime, in Messi. And just he's just fantastic, guys. He's fantastic. And you know just looking at like the setup though of Argentina, and like, like out of possession, Messi's not gonna like run everywhere and press fellas and try and, but they really do compensate the fact that like he's not gonna do that. And but he does, like, he actually does offer something off the ball in terms of even just blocking a passing lane, or like just forcing a team down one side. So, but when you've got Rodrigo de Paul there behind and just covering everything, sweeping up everything, it's just great to have. Um, so he was like, he started on the right, but really you never really seen him on the right. He was moving in field, trying to get close to Lautaro Martinez, trying to get into those central spaces, and that's where he was getting the goals from. But yeah, the Argentinians, they defended well. They were up against an Algerian side that, look, they will get tested more. Um, but they were very good defensively. Like, and McAllister, I actually thought, he's had a tough season this year. But I actually thought he was quite disciplined there in that like sixth role, that central defensive midfield role, where he had Enzo in front of him and Rodrigo de Paul in front of him. But he was very good at just kind of, you know, covering the spaces in the middle and actually sticking to his man and stopping his man from getting the ball. England, they played last night. Well, when I'm recording, they played last night. Guys, they were actually very good. I know a lot of Irish probably, it pains them to admit it, but I have no bother in admitting it. Like, I'll try look at every team objectively. Like, I was very impressed by England last night. I actually thought they were unlucky to concede two goals. Like, they had one lapse of concentration. The second goal, like with James, I think it was his man scored. Quite poor there for the ball, that was played over. I think Consa keeping them on side, but I don't know. Like, they conceded a worldie as well. But other than that, like, I really thought, they were very intense with their off the ball. Anytime that there was a loose ball, they were straight on it. Kane was leading the press. Bellingham was following suit, and Bellingham was like a man possessed in that match. I've never seen the guy run as much, in terms, and be like apply himself as much in terms of like getting the ball back, trying to trying to close down his man. I thought it was a very comfortable performance from England. States, USA, USA, USA. They look like the team, guys. I must say, I'd come here and I'd diss them if they were poor, and I'd call them out if they were poor, and they'd be in another list if they were. But they look like the team that had the most fun. I know they're up against a very poor Paraguay side, that didn't really lay a glove in them at all. Like, but some of the players, like some of the performances, Tim Ream at the back, like he was sweeping up everything. 38-year-old veteran centre back, and he was outpacing a lot of like the forwards there, over like quick distances, like short distances, and I have to give credit to him. Pulisic, I know a lot of the Americans think he's like a level with Messi and Ronaldo, like, but again, I'll give credit when it's due. He had his man on toast. His man didn't know how to deal with him at all. He was very good, very direct. Took on his man, getting crosses in, getting to the byline, and Balogun as well. Former Arsenal player. I thought he was just a constant thorn in the Paraguay side. They just didn't know how to deal with him. They'll have bigger tests. They haven't even really been tested, so maybe they should be in the hesitant category. But I'm going to put them in the optimistic category because I don't know. I think you could really see the imprint of Pochettino on the side. The next two teams, I'm going to actually group them together because, and it could be a shock, but I'm still optimistic on Spain. I know they drew with Cape Verde, and it was probably the shock of the tournament so far. But I really felt like the team they were up against was a very spirited team, very, defensively solid team, and they just, I felt like they had more than enough chances, similar with like Portugal, which is actually quite ironic because they did score, but they didn't look like, I felt like they didn't look like scoring like after their goal, Portugal. Whereas Spain, like they were creating chances, they just couldn't take their chances. I think Ferran Torres had a couple of great opportunities. I don't know, was it him that missed the chance when Cucurella passed it back? I've watched so much football now, guys, in the last week, you won't believe. So my memory is a little bit hazy. But yeah, they were just, look, it was just your typical Spain game, keeping the ball side to side. They had openings, they just didn't take it. I really feel like that game on another day could have been like 3 or 4 nil to Spain. It just, look, I gave credit to Cape Verde, but if I'm looking at it realistically, and I think they, I don't think it was a shocker like of a performance from them. Shocking finishing, yes, but I thought they actually played okay, and I'm not going to change my prediction. I still have them as the favourites. They're my favourites um, to win it. Um, and yeah, you only have to look at results. Like Argentina were the winners in the last World Cup, lads, and they actually lost to Saudi Arabia. They didn't draw. They actually lost their first game, and they went on to win it. So I don't see why Spain, drawing this game, they could still go on and actually win the tournament. And Switzerland, again, like playing Qatar, and credit to Qatar, but I thought Switzerland had more than enough chances to put Qatar to bed. Um, you know, I think on another day that finishes 2 or 3 nil to Switzerland. They were lackluster. They were a bit sloppy in moments, and as long as the game is 1 0, you are susceptible to letting in a goal right at the death, which is what happened. It was very much like I felt against the run of play when Qatar did get the goal. Like fair play to them, But I think Switzerland, they will fix up for the next match, and yeah, I'd still be quite optimistic about them to finish on. I wanted to, because I think it's been quite refreshing watching a lot of the football lately, and there's no you know the tribalism, like in terms of like club football. You might have some allegiances to some countries that you might want to do well, or you might not want to do well. But I think overall, I think with tournament football, with international football, and with a World Cup, we can kind of all look at like these some referee decisions and some VAR decisions quite objectively. The main ones, really, like we're going back to the first day, was the 3 red cards in the Mexico and South Africa game. Now, just to recap, there was 1 red card when the Mexican guy was running through, and the defender, like he's running one way and the other guy's running the other way, and he just takes his feet. I think it's your standard, denial of a goal scoring opportunity, dog. So standard red card. I hate those red cards personally when guys are just trying to run back, but he has run across them. It's more the ones really for me when they're running kind of straight, and the guy just tries to put his leg in front to trip him over. But I don't know. I think the guy was quite clever for Mexico. He saw your man coming. I think he probably would have closed him down, but yeah, he tangle of legs there comes across, and the standard red card. The other one was like there was like a slap, wasn't it? Yeah, the slap on the guy. I mean, I thought it was quite stupid. Like it wasn't really violent. Um, but like again, the referee sending him off for that. Can he feel hard done by? I think it was stupid, to be honest with you. I think he meant to actually like slap him. It wasn't like there was any kind of force or violence in it, but I think it was more as the intention of it maybe deserved the red card. But I'd like to hear your thoughts on it. Like, do you think like that was a red card? Because I personally don't, but I can understand why. The last red card actually was quite. I actually changed my mind on this one. Was the Mexican red card? It was when the South African guy knocked the ball past the last defender from Mexico, and like I thought at the time, like because he just absolutely takes him down. He's got no intention of playing the ball. Tactical foul. Um, But I actually felt at the time that there was cover coming across. There was Mexican defenders there coming across, but nah. I watched it back. He's probably in a goal scoring opportunity there if he's not fouled, and I think the referee probably like made the right call. The Sweden game, lads. I don't know if you seen that, but for the fourth goal for Sweden, there was a ball into the box where initially the goal scorer was offside, but because when the ball was played in, Isak, we weren't sure if he touched the ball or not. But when Isak, it turns out he did touch it. When he plays it, the guy is then onside. So then technically it was an onside decision, and technically I suppose it was the right decision. Um, I mean, I think we need to bring in this technology into the Premier League or into like club football, because it's unreal how they have it now that there's like a sound wave on the ball, like the ball can determine if it's been touched. The technology can determine, and like if you're watching it without that technology, I don't think you could definitively say that there was a touch from Isak and therefore it should be offside. But this technology has shown that there was a slight touch. It was only faint. I'd say it was just a little brisk off of Isak's boot. But yeah, I'm actually a big fan of that technology, and maybe could be something that could be brought forward into the game. Just determining like is there a touch on the ball or not. The Messi red card. For people that didn't see it, like Messi, I was just talking there a minute ago about like not, I suppose, being out of possession and like closing fellas down, but he actually did close down a fella with one incident, and he came down the back of his of the Algerian fella's calf, and it look it's one of them where like I think you have to watch the video. Like there's so many of these incidents. Like I always like there'd be guys debating online and putting in screenshots and still images, and like still images are good like when you're applying context. Um, but to just put in a still image and say, "Oh, look at this," it's like, no. He comes down the back of his calf. It looked to me like a similar challenge to one that Havertz got away with towards the end of the season there against Burnley. I think Foden got away with one earlier in the season in the Premier League. Um, there was who else? There was another one. Was it Javi Simmons? I think got penalised for it against Liverpool. So there is like an inconsistency there. I think the factor like you have to kind of take into account is the force. I think if a red card was given there, I don't think he could have had any complaints. Even though I do think like it's, I just think I'll reinforce it. Like it's the force. Like you can't, like I'm not saying that you can put studs on someone on the back of someone's legs, but in a micro moment, like it can happen in a game. It's whether or not you actually, you know, come down on his leg, like intentionally to try and hurt the player. I don't think Messi tries to hurt the player, but it's an interesting one, and I want to find out, like off of people as well. Like, do you think that's a red card? Is it a Stonewall red card? Let me know. Let me know in the comments. The last one that I'll discuss is the Mbappe and Mane penalty debate. Now, I think this one splits opinion right down the middle, and I can see the argument from both sides. I'm going to go with the argument first that it is a penalty. There is contact. I saw there was people saying that there isn't contact. There is contact. Um, you know, I think I think you couldn't have any complaints there if a penalty was made, which is why I think it probably is a penalty. Although I probably contradict myself now in a minute, but yeah, I just think like Mane just completely like lost the head there, dives into the challenge, doesn't get the ball, and makes a bit of contact with Mbappe when Mbappe is just trying to jump over him. Um, the argument that it isn't a penalty, I think personally that Mbappe is already on his way down. The contact then I'd say is it's slight. I think contact, in the game, it's part of the game, contact, and I don't think. Sorry, guys, my phone decided to die there in the middle of making a point, but I guess really, the point is if I have to jump over your tackle, and I fall because of that, is that a penalty? That is the question. So I'd love to know your thoughts. Thanks for watching. Give it a like if you can. It helps me grow the channel. Subscribe if you haven't already, and subscribe for more World Cup content. Thanks for watching Let's Chat Football, and I'll see you next time.